70 to 85 million people. That is how many human beings died. More than the entire current population of France and the United Kingdom put together. And it began with one man. A man who failed at everything. A man nobody took seriously. A man the world laughed at until it was too late. How does someone like that convince an entire civilization to march into hell? Germany, 1919. The First World War is over, and Germany has lost. The Treaty of Versailles forces Germany to accept full blame for the war through Article 231, the War Guilt Clause. The price tag is 132 billion gold marks in reparations. Germany did not finish paying that debt until 2010. The treaty strips territory, shrinks the army to just 100,000 soldiers, and buries an entire nation under shame. By November 1923, hyperinflation has destroyed the currency so badly that $1 equals 4.2 trillion German marks. People burn banknotes for warmth because the paper is worth more as fuel than as money. By 1932, unemployment hits 30%. 1 in 3 Germans has no work. National shame, rage, humiliation, desperation. All of it piling up with nowhere to go. Hitler did not create this anger. He only aimed it. Adolf Hitler was born April 20th, 1889 in Braunau am Inn, Austria. He applied to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts in 1907 and again in 1908. Rejected both times. The admissions panel noted his drawings lacked human figures. He could paint buildings, but not people. He ended up homeless in Vienna, selling cheap watercolors on the street. An enormous ego with zero recognition. When World War I broke out, he volunteered immediately. He earned the Iron Cross, first and second class. For the first time in his life, he belonged somewhere. Then Germany surrendered in November 1918. Hitler was in Pasewalk Military Hospital, temporarily blinded by mustard gas, when he received the news. He later wrote that he wept for the first time since his mother's death. In that darkness, something shifted. Personal failure and national humiliation compressed into one man. Munich, September 1919. The German army sends Hitler to spy on a tiny political group called the German Workers' Party. It has about 54 members meeting in a rented beer hall back room. He is supposed to observe. Instead, he speaks, and the room stops. Within 2 years, he leads the party. It is renamed the National Socialist German Workers' Party, the Nazi Party. Hitler studied crowd psychology carefully. His speeches followed a precise pattern. Begin quietly, describing German suffering. Build shared frustration. Name the enemy. Reach a peak of rage, then offer salvation. It was a formula, and it worked every time. The 1943 OSS Psychological Profile, written by Walter C. Langer, described Hitler's primary rules this way. Never allow the public to cool off. Never admit a fault. Never accept blame. Concentrate on one enemy at a time and blame him for everything. People will believe a big lie sooner than a little one. And if you repeat it frequently enough, people will sooner or later believe it. On November 8, 1923, Hitler attempted a coup in Munich, the beer hall putsch. It failed. He was arrested, sentenced to 5 years, but served roughly 1 year in Landsberg prison. His cell was well furnished. He had visitors, correspondence, relative freedom. There, he dictated Mein Kampf, a manifesto, a warning. The world chose not to read it. Joseph Goebbels became Reich Minister of Propaganda in 1933. He held a doctorate from Heidelberg. He was brilliant and completely devoted. Together, he and Hitler built what may be the most effective mass psychological manipulation system ever created. The Nuremberg rallies were not political events. They were religious ceremonies. Albert Speer designed them using 150 anti-aircraft searchlights to create what became known as the Cathedral of Light, visible from 8 kilometers away.
Adolf Hitler, leader of Nazi Germany, is the man who has accomplished this revival, and Adolf Hitler takes the salute, his generals and Goering behind him. It is not the manpower of the modern German army that impresses most, but the mechanical weapons of warfare with which it is now equipped. squadrons of the latest fighting machines.
Attendance ranged from 100,000 to 700,000 people. Radio became the delivery system. By 1939, 16 million subsidized Volksempfänger receivers had been distributed across Germany, making it the most radio-saturated nation on Earth. Every German home heard Hitler's voice. Leni Riefenstahl's film Triumph of the Will, released in 1935, showed Hitler descending from the clouds like a god arriving to save his people. In Mein Kampf, Hitler had written about what he called the big lie. The idea that ordinary people believe a massive lie more easily than a small one because they cannot imagine anyone fabricating something so enormous. Conformity, social pressure, repetition, fear. The machine was designed by people who understood exactly how the human mind breaks. In 1928, the Nazi Party received about 800,000 votes in the federal election. Nobody worried. Then in October 1929, Wall Street crashed. The Great Depression spread to Germany and devastated what was left of the economy. By July 1932, the Nazi Party won roughly 38% of the vote and around 14 million ballots cast, becoming the largest single party in the Reichstag with 230 seats. Their support dipped to about 33% in November 1932, but the damage was done. On January 30th, 1933, President Hindenburg appointed Hitler as Chancellor, believing he could be controlled. Hitler did not seize power through a military coup. The system, exhausted, divided, and underestimating him, handed him the keys. On February 27, 1933, the Reichstag building burned. Hitler blamed communists.
In 1933, no law could inhibit Germany's political and military rise to power. In a step-by-step process, the National Socialist government dismantled constitutional law, usurped justice, and created a lethal totalitarian system that soon engulfed.
The Reichstag fire decree passed the very next day, suspending all civil liberties overnight. The Enabling Act followed on March 23, 1933. Parliament legally granted Hitler the power to make laws without its approval. All opposition parties were banned by July. Democracy dismantled in under 5 months. He did not destroy democracy with a gun. He did it with a ballot, a crisis, and a parliament that voted away its own power. The night of the long knives. June 30th to July 2nd, 1934. Over 85 people executed. The message was clear. The law is whatever Hitler says it is. In August 1934, President Hindenburg died and Hitler merged both offices into one, becoming Führer with absolute control. The Nuremberg Laws of September 1935 stripped Jewish people of citizenship and forbade intermarriage.
Poland, September 1939. The German foe begins its ruthless march of conquest and sets the stage for World War II. Poland's 34 million inhabitants, crushed, scattered, and enslaved. Tens of thousands of square miles of territory shrink before the movement of lightning-armored columns. Poland and the world learn the meaning of a grim new word.
On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. World War II began. The Holocaust killed 6 million Jewish people through systematic industrial murder. Millions more were killed. Roma, disabled people, Soviet prisoners of war, political prisoners, homosexuals. The Wannsee Conference took place on January 20th, 1942. 15 officials, a villa outside Berlin, about 90 minutes over lunch. The final solution was formalized. Death camps at Auschwitz-Birkenau, Treblinka, Sobibor, Belzec. How did ordinary people carry this out? Stanley Milgram's experiment at Yale University in 1961 found that 65% of ordinary Americans administered what they believed were lethal electric shocks to a stranger simply because an authority figure in a lab coat told them to continue. They were not monsters. They were obedient. Hannah Arendt, covering the trial of Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem in 1961, observed that Eichmann was not a fanatic. He was a bureaucrat, a middle manager following orders. She called it the banality of evil. Evil does not require monsters. It requires systems, authority, and the quiet surrender of individual conscience. Operation Barbarossa, launched in June 1941, the largest military operation in history. It stalled by winter. At Stalingrad, from August 1942 to February 1943, 300,000 Axis troops were encircled and destroyed. Hitler had forbidden retreat. From that point forward, he overrode his generals at every turn, replacing expertise with absolute authority. His personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell, administered up to 28 different medications daily by 1944, including methamphetamine, opioids, and barbiturates. By 1945, Hitler showed trembling hands, a stooped posture, and a dragging left leg. He was 55, but looked decades older. In April 1945, with Soviet forces closing on Berlin, Hitler retreated to the Führer bunker, 8.5 meters underground, walls 4 meters thick. On April 29th, he married Eva Braun and dictated his final testament. Even in the end, he blamed the Jews. On April 30th, 1945, at approximately 3:30 in the afternoon, Hitler shot himself. Eva Braun took cyanide. Their bodies were burned in the Chancellery Garden as Soviet shells fell overhead. The 1,000-year Reich lasted 12 years and 3 months. Most people treat Hitler as something alien, a unique monster that appeared once and could never appear again. But that reading of history is dangerously wrong. Hitler was a product of a peace treaty designed to humiliate rather than heal, of economic collapse that made desperate people stop asking questions, of democratic institutions that failed to defend themselves when it mattered, of millions of ordinary people who chose obedience over conscience, one small step at a time. A 2025 DNA study led by geneticist Turi King claimed to have sequenced Hitler's DNA from a blood-stained cloth found in the Führer bunker, identifying markers for rare genetic conditions and elevated risk scores for schizophrenia and other disorders. But scientists have criticized the study as not peer-reviewed, and the sample's authenticity has been questioned. Trying to reduce what happened to a diagnosis misses the point entirely. The conditions that made Hitler possible were not medical. They were political, economic, and social. Propaganda that targets specific groups as enemies. Leaders who use fear and blame as fuel. Democratic protections dismantled piece by piece through legal means. A population too exhausted or too divided to resist. These ingredients are not unique to 1933. History is not a story about the past. It is a mirror, and right now, it is asking us what we see.